Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ormond Beach, a welcoming community of compassion and acceptance. I am Cliff Jackson, and I invite you to our virtual service this morning. The in-person discussion group and worship services usually held in our building have been suspended until further notice. We will continue to hold our popular discussion group at 9:15 a.m. and worship at 10:30 every Sunday on Zoom until it is safe to hold worship in our building again. Reverend Kathy Turicki is our minister. Today, Ellen Nielsen is providing our service titled The Long Friendship, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. If you are joining us for the first time this morning, we extend a welcome to you. We look forward to getting to know you better. We invite you to stay after today's service and join us in some further conversation. We hope you will also introduce yourself and help us get to know you. We also invite you to our website at uuormond.org and look for the Welcome button under the picture of our minister, Reverend Kathy. There you will find how to get further connected with our congregation and learn more about Unitarian Universalism. And now, on to announcements. We begin with a reminder about safety. We ask all of us to take extra care when visiting our building, which remains closed to most activities at this time. But if you must be in the building, please wear a mask. And if you are using a single layer thin mask, you may want to double up. We also ask you to please practice social distancing, even when you are wearing a mask. Wash your hands often and use hand sanitizer. We have a dispenser in the kitchen if you need it. Now then, we have several events coming up soon. You can find Zoom links to our events in our weekly e-news, the Jotter monthly news, and at our website, uuormond.org. For our first event, our next Zoom bag lunch with our minister, Reverend Kathy Turicki, will be tomorrow, Monday, February 22nd, from 12 to 1 p.m. Also on Monday, 6:30 p.m., there will be a Faith Justice Ministry Network meeting. Everyone in the congregation is invited, but especially those who attended a house meeting in this past fall and committed to be a Justice Ministry Network member. Next up, on Wednesday, February 24th, from 4 to 5:30 p.m., we have a lifelong learning event with questions and answers on several topics led by Dan Kennedy. And on Thursday, I'll be leading our spiritual exploration group from 4:30 to 6 p.m. We will continue our food drive of non-perishable items next Saturday, February 27th, in the UU parking lot from 11 to 1. Donations will go to the Dolliner Food Bank of Ormond Beach. Our current website will be ending, and our website team members thank you for sharing your time and giving feedback to us to improve the new website. It will be up at the end of the month. The website team gives thanks to those of you who let us know how much you like it already, and to those who shared ideas on how to make it even better. We've reviewed security, button themes, scrolling, and communication channels. Our team continues to make what changes we can, and some will wait as our site will be continuously evolving. If you meant to send us a note about the website and didn't quite get to it, please send your email to Julie Hilburn and Ludi Goodson. Thank you again for your willingness to take part in this important project for our church community. And for future visits to the building and scheduling events, we ask that you please remember to schedule through our administrator, Kathy Jackson. We still need to coordinate Zoom meetings and events and visits to the church to avoid accidental meetups with other folk and to post events on the church calendar. Now, for the Alliance, because of the economic damage caused by the pandemic, many families in our community don't have enough to eat. From now until Easter, the UUCOB Alliance will be raising money and also collecting food for the Jerry Doliner Food Bank, located in Ormond Beach. If you want to donate to this project, please send your check made out to UUCOB Alliance to the Alliance Treasurer, Linda Kalajian. In the memo line on the check, please write that this is a contribution for the food bank. Linda's mailing address is in our directory. Contact Kathy Jackson if you need a copy of the directory. The ability to make online donation through our website is temporarily on hold until we launch our new website at the end of this month. We appreciate your continued pledge payments and donations in support of our virtual services and our congregation. Please mail your check to the UUCOB street address of 56 North Halifax Drive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
At the sound of the chime, our service begins. For our prelude, we have Air on a G String by Johann Sebastian Bach. It is performed by Janet Strumpus and was recorded by Felix Fernandez.
May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other.
While I light this imaginary chalice, I invite you to light a chalice at home if you have one nearby. I light this chalice, a single flame which I hope kindles many hearts this morning. Let this flame unite us in virtual community and remind us of each other's presence as we worship from many singular rooms. Let this flame inspire in us faith and courage to face these difficult times. Let this flame be our guide in making sense of a chaotic world, and let its light show us the way to beloved community, both near and far. Let us now recite together our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of our congregation, and service is our aim. To dwell together in peace and freedom, to seek the truth, and to help one another, these are our goals. Now is the time in our service for sharing joys and concerns. From John and Barbara Sandberg, their 7-year-old granddaughter has recovered from COVID, but their daughter-in-law is still very sick. They were without electricity. The water had to be boiled, but they had no heat. They could not get to the grocery store, but if they could, the store was out of food. They sent me a photo of them in a tent in their living room, all together with the dog freezing. A lot of ice and snow. Their tropical fish died, but the snake is okay. Finally got electricity and the temperature is in the 50s, so the streets are being cleared for traffic. I told them to come to Florida, but their airport is closed. The update is they survived the worst and things are looking up. And from Ludi, her brother Tommy lives in Texas as well, where power was out for 5 days. He is restricted to a wheelchair and an electric adjustable bed. He had no phone service or heat until Saturday. During the week, one neighbor, a former nurse, came over every day to check on him and to help him with getting up and going to bed. When heat joyfully came back on, he turned it up to 78 degrees just to get the chill out of his bones. For these joys and concerns, and for those unspoken yet remain in our hearts, we offer this prayer. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. For our anthem today, we have One Voice by Barry Manilow, sung by our choir with director Dan Kerr and accompanied by Janice Trumpus.
And there's a time
And now, for our service this morning, we have The Long Friendship, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, brought to you by Ellen Nielsen. Ellen will begin in a moment with the words from the preamble to the Declaration of Independence.
So this is not a sermon, it's a story, but it tells us a lot about resilience and healing. The action takes place over 50 years, and it begins with this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. So it's summer 1776. The American colonies and the British Army have been fighting for over a year. The British have occupied New York City. The Second Continental Congress has been meeting in Philadelphia since May, and they've passed a resolution to publish a formal Declaration of Independence and have appointed a committee of 5 members, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman, to prepare a document. John Adams persuades Thomas Jefferson to write the draft. These are historical facts that most of us learned in grade school. What do we know about the people behind the story? In 1776, John Adams, then 41 years old, was one of the leaders of the Revolutionary movement. He had lived on a family farm in Braintree, Massachusetts, a small town near Boston, for most of his life and had graduated from Harvard College. He was short and stout, vigorous, peppery, and outspoken, and happily married to a woman as outspoken as himself, whom many consider to be America's first feminist. A prominent attorney, he had defended the British soldiers who had been involved in the Boston Massacre when they were charged with murder in 1770. He did so not because he was pro-British, but because of his commitment to a fair trial and the presumption of innocence. In his closing argument, he said, "It is more important that innocence be protected than it is that guilt be punished, for guilt and crimes are so frequent in this world that they cannot all be punished. But if innocence itself is brought to the bar and condemned, perhaps to die, then the citizen will say, whether I do good or whether I do evil is immaterial, for innocence itself is no protection. And if such an idea were to take hold in the mind of the citizen, that would be the end of security whatsoever." Thomas Jefferson, then 33, was at the time much less well known. A tall, soft-spoken Virginian, he had lost his father as a teenager and had inherited a 5,000-acre plantation and numerous slaves. He had attended the College of William and Mary and had briefly practiced law and had served as a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses. He was deeply interested in architecture and had already begun building his home in Monticello. Much later, Jefferson would write about this time. "Beset with difficulties and dangers, we were fellow laborers in the same cause, struggling for what is most valuable to man, his right of self-government, laboring always at the same oar, with some wave ever ahead, threatening to overwhelm us. We knew not how we rode through the storm with heart and hand and made a happy port. Fast forward to 1784 and 1789. John Adams and Benjamin Franklin are living in Paris and serving as diplomats for the new nation of the United States. Thomas Jefferson joins them. Their job is to negotiate commercial treaties with Great Britain and other European countries. After Franklin returns to the United States, Adams and Jefferson renew their friendship. Abigail Adams takes Jefferson, who is still in mourning for his young wife, under her wing and helps care for Jefferson's two daughters when they come to stay with him. Eventually, Adams will become the ambassador to Great Britain and Jefferson will become the ambassador to France. The two men will remain friends for a while, but as the years pass, a gulf will open up between them. Adams will develop an admiration for some aspects of the British parliamentary monarchy and will later be suspected of wanting to set up a system resembling it in the United States. Jefferson will develop a close friendship with Lafayette, witness the storming of the Bastille, and will continue to express support for the French Revolution even after the King of France is sent to the guillotine. They had always differed profoundly in their relationship to slavery. Adams owned several farms and employed farm workers, but he earned most of his money from his law practice and later from government salaries. He never owned any slaves and he despised slavery. As a young legislator in Virginia, Jefferson expressed opposition to slavery and even introduced bills to abolish it. Yet his family owned many slaves. The hard truth was that his way of life and his cherished projects depended on the unpaid labor of slaves. He eventually freed some slaves, but many were sold after his death to pay his debts. There's some evidence that Adams was aware of the relationship between Jefferson and his slave Sally Hemings and disapproved of it. Fast forward again to 1790, 1801. After the Constitution is ratified and George Washington becomes our first president, both men return to serve in the new government. Adams is elected vice president and Jefferson serves for 2 years as Secretary of State. While in the cabinet, Jefferson clashes frequently with the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. It is at this time that our first two political parties, the Federalists, led by Hamilton, who believed in a strong central government and a national banking system, and the Democrat Republicans, founded by Jefferson and James Madison, who favored less central government and more power for the states, develop. Since Adams is a Federalist, the two former friends have one more reason to be divided. President Washington has served 2 terms and chooses not to run again in 1796. The 1796 election is our country's first partisan election. Adams is the Federalist candidate and Jefferson is the Democratic Republican candidate. Originally, our Constitution provided that when the Electoral College voted for president, the runner-up became vice president. So when Adams becomes president, Jefferson, now the leader of the opposing political party, becomes his vice president. With different philosophies of government, Adams and Jefferson no longer can pull the same oar. Adams is a one-term president, and his 4 years in office from 1796 to 1800 are a time of turmoil. The United States comes close to war with the revolutionary government of France. The Alien and Sedition laws are passed, strongly opposed by Jefferson. The Federalist Party splits into 2 wings. At the very end of Adams' term, he appoints many new judges, all Federalists, an action which Jefferson still resents years later. In December of 1800, Adams' son Charles dies after a long struggle with alcoholism, possibly by suicide. The election of 1800 is a train wreck. Adams runs for re-election. Jefferson again runs against him, with Aaron Burr as his vice presidential running mate. Both political parties spew vitriol. When the results are in, Jefferson, the outgoing vice president, presides over the certification of the Electoral College votes as provided for in Article 2 of the Constitution. And we're familiar with that process right now. Adams receives 65 electoral votes. Jefferson and Burr each received 73 electoral votes. The election is thrown into the House of Representatives. After 36 ballots, Jefferson is elected president. At 4 a.m. on Inauguration Day, March 4th, 1801, John Adams steps aboard a public stagecoach and goes home to Massachusetts, where he will spend the rest of his life as a private citizen. He does not attend Jefferson's inauguration, nor is he invited. Adams and Jefferson will never meet face to face again, and they will not communicate with each other for 12 years. But despite all the storm and stress, the first transfer of power from one political party to another in 1801 was peaceful, as were all the others, until this year. Here are some excerpts from Jefferson's inaugural address. Let us then, fellow citizens, unite with one heart and one mind. Let us restore to social intercourse that harmony and affection without which liberty and even life itself are but dreary things. Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. If there be any among us who would wish to dissolve this union or to change its Republican form, he's using small r's here, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated when reason is left free to combat it. Okay, fast forward again to 1812. And at this time, Jefferson is out of office and Madison is president. Benjamin Rush, another signer of the Declaration of Independence, writes a letter to John Adams, urging him to renew his correspondence with Jefferson. Adams is skeptical, but several months later, he sends a letter to Jefferson, informing him that he will be sending him a packet of homespun. The homespun is actually a book of lectures written by John Quincy Adams, John Adams' son. Jefferson responds with a description of how wool and flax are spun and woven at Monticello, but on receiving Adams' gift, sends him a pamphlet he has written recently. The ice is broken, and a lively correspondence begins to flow back and forth between Massachusetts and Monticello. Both men are done with politics and public life, but their curiosity and intellectual powers are undiminished. They're living in the country far from stimulating society. They're probably a little bored, a little lonely. They write about their health, the weather, their families, Jefferson's agricultural projects, their disillusionment with political parties. They compare mainstream Christianity, theism, and Unitarianism, debate the origin of the American Indian tribes, and document the rise and fall of Napoleon. Sometimes they write in French or classical Greek. Adams wrote more often. Over 100 of his letters to Jefferson have been preserved. Jefferson wrote fewer letters, but in general, they were more polished. It was clear that both men cherished their restored friendship. Adams, you and I ought not to die before we have explained ourselves to each other. Jefferson, I have thus stated my opinion on a point on which we differ, not with a view to controversy, for we are both too old to change opinions which are the result of a long life of inquiry and reflection, but on the suggestions of a former letter of yours, that we ought not to die before we have explained ourselves to each other. If we do not think exactly alike, it matters little to our country, which, after devoting to it long lives of disinterested labor, we have delivered over to our successors in life, who will be able to take care of it and of themselves. They consoled one another in the face of illness, misfortune, and losses. When Abigail Adams died in 1818, Jefferson wrote, "Tried myself in the school of affliction by the loss of every form of connection which can rive the human heart. I know well and feel what you have lost, what you have suffered, are suffering, and have yet to endure. The same trials have taught me that for ills so immeasurable, time and silence are the only medicine." Adams responded, "Your letter of November 13th gave great delight, not only by the divine consolation it afforded me under my great affliction, but as it gave me full proof of your restoration to health. While you live, I seem to have a bank at Monticello on which I can draw for a letter of friendship and entertainment when I please." The two men continued their correspondence for 5 more years. Their last exchange of letters was in the spring of 1826. Adams was then 91 years old and Jefferson was 83. On July 4th, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was first published, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died within a few hours of each other. We're now going to hear an overture by George Frederick Handel, performed by Felix Fernandez, which Jefferson might have been familiar with and might even have played on his violin.
Please join me in repeating the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. These are the words of Hosea Ballou, one of the founders of Universalism.
Our postlude this morning, is Bagatelle by Ludwig von Beethoven. He called this a light-hearted musical piece. It is performed by Janet Strompas and recorded by Felix Fernandez.